we started, sir. We should not never text this one at all, sir. Yes, sir. So we are live now, sir. So you can speak, sir. There will be 5 to 10 seconds delay in the output, but you can start saying.
Hello. We are starting the live session for the introductory programming course in C. Welcome all who are already here. So many of you have given some questions for me to answer in this session. So first, I'll try to see if the people who are live on air have some questions. Okay. So good evening to all of you. Yeah, so okay, so I'll answer the questions for the people who are already online. So one of the questions is, what is the best book for C programming? Yeah, so so the book that I followed is Kernighan and Ritchie Programming in C, but that is a very difficult book. I also recommend Shom series for C programming. In general, there are several tutorials available online. So I'll try to post some good links in the course webpage. Okay. Now, yeah, I don't. Yeah, yeah, so right, okay, somebody says suggested Balaguri Swami. I think it's also a good book. There's a lot of questions about the most popular language and so on. So in the industry currently, you would tend to use Java or Python. If you're a specialized programming in operating systems, embedded systems, and things like that, it's usual to use C. I would say that if you're trying to learn programming, maybe you can start with C or Python, and then you can gradually move to other languages. So in particular, I don't think that once you learn one language deeply, it is not very difficult to switch to other languages. So there are some questions about exam patterns and things like that. Maybe the best place to answer that will be that I'll give a maybe a brief announcement sometime later saying what is the exact exam pattern. So hopefully everybody can see that. Yeah. So currently, if you're new into programming, then Python is definitely recommended. Okay, so yeah, so there are some questions like, is it mandatory to learn C before Java? There's nothing like that. I mean, Java is a more sophisticated language. There are more features to learn, so it may be easier to learn C first before you learn Java, because Java has object-oriented programming concepts. Okay. Yeah, so as I said, any questions about examination pattern, I'll probably make an announcement later in the course, which tell you for um, which tell you about the questions. So, is there any book for C programming aptitude question? I'm not aware of anything, but there are books which you know that people use for interview preparation and things like that. I'll try to compile a list. So yeah, there's a question about ANSI C versus other flavors of C. ANSI C is the standard version of C programming language, and various standards are updated. So there is C standard from 2011. There is a standard this year, and so on. But the core language is what we cover in the course. So there are things about NPTEL certificate. Can you use it outside and things like that? You can always present it outside. Whether they will consider it is up to them. Okay. Yeah, so any exam related question I think can be discussed in a separate announcement and discussion forum. Um, there are some questions about assignment 4. I'm not sure what is the deal. Probably there is something wrong with the setting. So we'll try to look into that issue tonight. Okay, so there are questions about pointers and preprocessors. These are coming later in the course. Okay, so we'll. So if you guys are. Okay, so some of the C++. Some people are asking about C++. C++ is a language which supports multiple methods of programming, like object-oriented programming and so on. So it's you can say C is a subset of C++. So if you learn C, you should have a good basis to start coding in C++. Yeah, and there are questions about which is the best compiler. I recommend GCC. I would certainly recommend not using Turbo C, partly because it is very old, and programs that you write in Turbo C will not compile in. So one of the famous problems is void main versus int main. The C standard is very clear that main should have return type int and not void. Okay, so if you write void main in Turbo C and it works on your machine, well, that is old C, and it should not work nowadays. So the NPTEL online compiler, as far as I know, is based on GCC. Okay. Yeah, so there's one question about presentation errors. Presentation error is just if you have a new line or extra space in your program, and maybe our test case does not have that, then we don't have anything to do. So basically, you will just ignore it. Yeah, this will there be any quiz assignment? No, we are not planning. This something about NPTEL. Why are NPTEL lectures boring? Okay, I don't know. Okay. Yeah, so there's a question about private tests. Basically, so every assignment question will have a few public tests so that you can test whether your code is working or not. And then you will be graded against some private tests, because that is, yeah, that's what we are basing our grading on. Okay, so basically we may make some 7 test cases, and we'll give you 3 test cases, and you can compare your output against that. And okay, and then when you grade, of course, we'll give you more test cases, and we are grading based on those. Though the private test cases are similar to the public test cases, just to make sure that your code is working on many cases. So some people have asked about C free. I apologize that I haven't heard about this compiler. I have to look this up. So I'll try it out and maybe make a video later or something. So as I posted earlier, I recommend Dev C because Dev C++ because it's a very easy setup, and I've made a video on basic compiling and running in Dev C++. But I'll also try C free. I'm hearing this for the first time, so I haven't tried this. Okay, there's no negative marking on presentation error. Somebody has asked that. Okay, right, assignments are hard. Okay, so this is some comment that is coming from multiple people. Probably, I mean, the level of difficulty of the assignments, I'm not sure. So probably we can try to simplify the later assignments. So this is actually meant for beginning programmers. So okay, yeah. So somebody has asked about code blocks. Code blocks is nice. Code blocks is recommended, just like Dev C++. So, but only thing that I would so far say don't use is Turbo C, because it's just really old, and code that works in Turbo C may not work in other places. Okay. So this I had also circulated a Google Forms, and many of you have asked questions in it. One of the questions that was common there is people had asked about whether I'll be able to cover multiple methods of sorting. So unfortunately, in this course, we are not covering any of that, except I think one of the lectures covers quicksort. But I recommend one of the data structures courses, which should cover this sorting algorithms in greater details. Okay. Okay, yeah. So multiple people have mentioned assignment 3 of week 4. Let me just. So I haven't seen what that is. So tonight I'll look at it to see what the issue is. Okay, so some people are interested in competitive programming and have asked questions about that in the Google Forms also. Competitive programming is highly encouraged. If you, yeah, so there are several online platforms like HackerRank, CodeChef, Spodge used to be one of them. So one of them that used to be very popular. So any of them, but those are slightly advanced. If you're a beginning programmer, I would say, get used to coding in C and get used to the fundamentals. But if you're slightly at a more medium level or advanced, I think competitive programming is highly recommended. Even if you don't end up taking part in competitions, it will increase your standards by quite a lot. Okay. Yeah, so this NPTEL certification and its value, I mean, okay, we certify that you have taken part in a examination and you've been graded accordingly and all that. Of course, you can present it during your interviews, and it's up to the company or whatever the interviewer to decide whether it can never hurt you. So that's all. And it could always help you depending on the score and so on. Okay, so if you permit me, I'll go over the questions in the Google form that people have submitted over the past 2-3 days. There are some interesting questions, and okay, yeah. So one of the questions, one of the top level questions is whether we should still be learning C and so on. C is very much used in the industry. There are programmer surveys that are done annually, and you can refer to which are done over a global level, and you can check any of these surveys to see whether what is the popularity of C and so on. So one of the surveys, I'll post a link. Yeah, so I'll post a link to one of the popular global surveys, and you can see for yourself what is the popularity of C in the industry and so on. Okay. Obviously, I will highly encourage you to learn multiple languages, but you have to start from somewhere, and C or Python may be good programming languages to begin with. Okay, so you can look at the standard industry surveys, and you can get a fairly good feel for what are the currently popular technologies, what are the employment prospects, and so on. These are very nice. Okay. Some of you have asked specific questions about code. Yeah. So one of the interesting questions that I've seen is okay. So I'll just type in a program that can be seen, a screen shared with you. So I'll just so the program submitted by a student is the following.
Can I screen share this one, sir?
Yeah, I think it is being screen shared.
Okay.
So float a equal to 0.07, and then you write a, if a equal to 0.07, then print hello, else sorry, printf hi or something. Okay, so this is a very simple code, and a is assigned floating value 0.07, and you would normally expect that this program should say that a is equal to 0.07 and it should print hello. Okay, so let's try that. So I hit compile and run, and this is of course a code belonging to a different code question. So um, so ignore this wrong answer and so on. Let's look at the actual output. Okay, so what do you expect to happen? You expect to have, I've just assigned it to 0.07, so I should expect this equality to be true. Okay, instead so it should print hello, but instead it actually prints hi. Okay, so one of the things that you can do is change, yeah, so the point of the code is what is the type of 0.07 in the equality. Okay, and I'll give a hint that it's probably double. So I'll try this, double a equal to 0.07. So I'll compile and run, and let's see what happens. If the equality succeeds, then it should print hello. Okay, and we see that that actually happened. Okay, so this, when you give 0.07 as a constant without saying anything, it is taken as a double. Okay. Let's try some couple of ways to try to fix that. Okay, so in this code, I have said that 0.07 is to be treated as float by giving 0.07. So since a is float and the constant 0.07 is also treated as float, this equality succeeds and it prints hello. Okay, so it actually prints hello. The way to say that is, I can also say that if you have 0.07, I'll cast it, I'll ensure yeah,
It's working.
it's working. Okay.
So, screen share.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I think yeah, so I'll do the screen share of the application window. Okay,
Screen share.
so we just yeah, I just shared. Okay, so I was about to just change it to float. Okay, do a cast explicitly as float, and then if you hit compile and run, it should print hello. Yeah, it printed hello. So the confusion was that if you just set the constant 0.07, it would be taken as double, and you're comparing a float a, which is 0.07 to double 0.07, and there are precision precision issues which I don't want to go in greater detail. But one way to make sure that such equalities work is if you convert both of them to float. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll take some of the questions again, which some people have asked about courses for data structures. There are NPTEL courses for data structures, and they'll probably run next semester. I haven't taken a look at the timetable. You can take a look at the catalog of courses which are available next week. Okay. Yeah, so some people have asked about whether the assignment deadline can be extended. I don't think it is up to me because these things are coordinated at the national level. One of the things that we can do is probably make the assignment slightly easier and maybe reduce the question or something. Um, yeah, so again, there are questions about where C is being used and so on. So please check uh, developer surveys for it. So here is a popular global survey, and I'll just yeah. So you can check this to see the comparative. I've posted a link in the chat window. You can check these surveys to check the popularity and things like that. Okay, so somebody has asked an interesting question about what exactly happens when you do a printf %d2 plus 2. Okay, so this goes into actual execution, and yes, I mean, so the same person has asked about assembly language and so on. So it's not necessary that um, it is performed in one particular way. So depending on the target machine, so if you're running it on your PC, it may run it in a certain way if it is having an Intel processor, and certain other way if it has an AMD processor and so on. But yeah, the rough idea is that you get your code gets translated into object code, and that object code will execute according to the current architecture in your machine. And this is why if you take your code and your compiled object code into another machine, it may not execute. You may have to recompile the code in that machine because it is architecture dependent. Okay. Yeah, so there are some differences between stack and queue and so on. These are covered in data structure courses. Please, there are NPTEL data structure courses in Python and abstract algorithms and data structure courses. You can take any of them and you will see them. Okay, so what is a segmentation error? Um, we'll cover this when we go over pointers and malloc. So segmentation error is an error that you will frequently encounter when you're doing coding using pointers. And it says that you are accessing a memory location that you are not allowed to access. That's essentially what it says. But that may not be helpful. Basically, segmentation error happens because you have used the pointers in some way that is erroneous. Okay, and what is that error depends on the particular code that you're writing, and we'll cover various examples in the lectures covering pointers and malloc. Okay, so again, the difference between void main and int main. So int main is the standard C. Void main was something that used to be supported earlier, and maybe some compilers like Turbo C compilers support it, but it's not valid C. Yeah, so there are several questions about comparative virtues of languages. Like, these are things that, okay, you can start with any language, but in the end, it helps to have multiple languages. So whether you start with C and then go to Python, or Python and eventually learn C, it does not matter because both of these languages are still useful, and uh, being experienced in C gives you a good handle on Python and C. So it's definitely recommended that yeah, you can learn C. Yeah, so and there are some questions about Android. I'm not aware of currently any courses in NPTEL dealing with Android, but yeah, these may be offered in the future. Okay, so again, so since the number of the types of questions are similar, um, in the uh, online form, some people have specifically asked about plus plus I plus plus, and so on. This is one of the confusing parts in C, and unfortunately, they seem to be very popular in interview questions. Um, there is a video that we'll post at the end telling you the actual story behind how do you calculate I plus 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 I and so on. And the general idea is that these behavior depends on the compiler, and some of the behavior is actually undefined. So on a particular machine, you run the code many times, it gives you the same answer. That doesn't mean that logically it should be the same answer on other machines. So in my opinion, this kind of an issue is just a yeah, this is just a feature of C from very old days, and uh, yeah, typically that is not the focus of a C programming course. But nevertheless, we have tried to demystify and explain some of the issues here. So somebody has asked, I plus plus is the same as I equal to I plus one. Well, not necessarily. It depends on where, in what context it is appearing, and so on. So we'll give you a video saying a slight detail about. So we'll look at the actual C standard, and yeah, we'll look at the actual C standard and give you an explanation for what exactly happens in these expressions. But please do not be, please do not be distracted with that, because that is definitely not the point of C. And I think interviewers who are asking these kind of questions are misguided, because these things have nothing to do with programming. Okay, so some people, this has appeared in the form as well about EOF. Okay, so the constant capital E, capital O, capital F. So that is basically defined in stdio.h as simply -1. So it is something to deal with the end of file character. So if you just check for when you're reading a character, you can just check for end of file. And if you enter the end of file character as Control D or in Linux, for example, or Control Z in Windows, I think. So your code checks for while C not equal to EOF. So you keep reading the characters, and then if you press Control D in Linux, it will stop. So Control D in Linux will cause the end of file character to the get char or scanf. Okay, so EOF is basically a character is basically -1, and it is used to signal the end of input. Yeah. Uh, yeah. So yeah, this core dump and segmentation error are to do with um, pointers and arrays. So or otherwise, if your code is running into an infinite loop and trying to use too much space to dump code. Yeah, so this one question, if I do int I equal to j, value of j is used assigned to I, but can we say that value of j is null? No, that is not true. I mean, the value of j is saved, is the same as before. Okay, has it disconnected?
Yeah, working.
Yeah, what does putchar and getchar do? Putchar prints one particular character, which is the argument, and getchar scans one character. Can I declare static variables within header files? Yes, you can. Um, so while we wait for a new type of question, Okay, so yeah, so okay. There's a question about what is a stack. A stack is a data structure which is used to store and access data in a certain way. Let's not. I mean, so this is beyond the scope of this course, so I'm not able to cover this in great detail. Please refer to a data structure course for this. Yeah, can you provide PDF notes? Yes, we'll try to give the PDF of the slides that are there in the lectures. Of course, there may be slight changes, but more or less it should be consistent. Um, okay, and yeah, so somebody has said, why should we not use getters? So getters is supposed to be not safe, but yeah. This is slightly an advanced topic. The idea is that getters does not check for the length of the input. So it's possible to um, write malicious code if the code is it's possible to give malicious input if your code is using getters function. But that's an intermediate level topic. We won't go into such detail in this course. Okay, so yeah, there's one question about private test cases. There's no logic as such of, I mean, the private test case depends on the question. Okay, so the reason for private test cases is this. Suppose we don't give private test cases, you can write a code that passes exactly the public test cases, right? And that where without solving the questions, you can just say that if the input of this is of this form, write this output. If the input is of this form, then write this input, write this output, and so on. So we want to prevent that, and we want to make sure that you are actually solving the question. So in order to test that, we'll give you some blind test cases, which will be revealed after the homework deadline is over. So after the homework deadline is over, the yeah. NPTEL and spoken tutorial are the same? I don't think so. I think spoken tutorial is a different initiative. Can we increase the size of a predefined array? Okay, so this is a nice question. In the course, I've always given specified array sizes. In modern C, it is possible to define variable array sizes. And if you want to increase the size of a predefined array, we don't cover that in the course, but I think it's possible in the modern C. Okay, what are bitwise operators? Bitwise operators are things like or, and so on. They are just like arithmetic operators, except they operate in Boolean type. Can we increase the size of a string? Well, that depends on if you have an array with more space, then you can increase the size of that array. Whereas if you have a string constant, its size cannot be later increased. Yeah, where can we get the private test cases? So the private test cases are given after the homework deadline is over. If you go back to the question, then you can see the private test cases. Okay, there's one intermediate level question, which is how can I get to see the coding of printf on the assembly language level? Okay, so if you have the GCC compiler, instead of saying GCC file name.c, if you say GCC minus s, yeah, so GCC minus capital S file name.c, then you can get the assembly code. So if you're familiar with assembly language programming, then you can see it. Yeah, so there are questions about after completing this course, which course should we register? I would suggest that any data structure course or a Python course. And as far as I understand, there is a data structures using Python course. So that may be a good place for you. So you learn a little bit of Python, and then you can also study data structures. Okay, do you have write a C program to get Pascal's triangle? Yes, I mean, you can use one of the recurrence equations and then okay, so recursion, we have detailed videos explaining recursion. I'll also post a file where you can see that any function that you can write using loops, you can write it recursively. So we'll post that as part of the PDF files for the course. Is it better to use conditional operator or if then else statement? It depends on the situation. Conditional operator is usually used if you have very small code. Otherwise, always prefer the if then else statement because it's easier to read. When should we use pointers in a C program? Well, okay. Yeah, we'll show a very specific example like swap, where some kind of functions cannot be written if you don't have pointers. And there are other places where pointers are helpful in order to have variable size data structures and so on. So we'll have some of these in the. Okay. I don't see. Yeah, so courses related to Python and things like that. I think it's better if you try out a few lectures and try to see if you can follow it. There's a question about what is a memory leak, and this is covered in the course lectures on pointers. So we'll cover something dealing with how do you identify memory leaks, what leads to dangling pointers, and so on. What is a ternary operator? Ternary operator is, somebody else has asked this question about a conditional operator. So conditional operator is a ternary operator in C. In general, a ternary operator is an operator that takes three arguments and gives a value. Okay, an example in C is the conditional operator. Somebody, yeah, so Altaf Babar has asked about what is two semicolons, but yeah, the two semicolon, a semicolon without any other thing preceding it is just an empty expression or an empty statement. So sometimes when you want to code an infinite loop, you would just say that for, and within brackets you say two semicolon. Basically, there's no initialization, there's no condition to terminate, so it just goes in an infinite loop. So what is limits.h? This is a header file where the maximum size of an integer, the maximum minimum value for an integer, and so on. These kind of constants are defined. So size limits, what is the biggest floating point value? These kind of things are defined. If we can pass arrays, then why malloc is used? Malloc is typically used in C when you want variable size data structures. So if you, for example, take an input argument n, and then you want to allocate n integer, n sized integer data structure, then you can use malloc for it. Okay, what is linker error? Linker error is encountered typically when you use a library function, but you haven't tried to link the library into your executable. So this typically happens in such an introductory course. You typically may include a math function, math.h function, but you don't give -lm. So lm says that you have to include the math library in your executable. If you don't do that, you will see something like a linker error. Okay, so yeah, so there are questions about what type of questions will be there in the exam. So as I said before, we'll probably try to post an announcement where slightly more details will be given about the questions in the exam. Okay, so in conclusion, I think some of the things are, some of the things are, people have asked about examination pattern. And PDF files and so on. So we'll make sure that those things are resolved. Okay. Yeah. Okay. There's something about L value and R value. L value and R value are the left hand side and the right hand side of an assignment expression. Okay. So yeah, again about the exam. Exam is going to be multiple choice with maybe fill in the blanks, and we'll give more details in an upcoming. Yeah, somebody said, can we communicate after completion of the course? Of course, I mean, if you want to, my email address is there, satyadev@csc.itk.ac.in. So I'll post that, and if you have doubts, you can always ask. Yeah, so there's one question about enter file in dev C++. If you're doing it in Windows, probably you can use Control Z. And if you're in Linux, you can use Control D to enter the EOF character. Okay, so if we are yeah, I guess we are almost out of time. So we'll have further at least one more live session, possibly 2 more live session, and then when you have further questions, we can always try to resolve it in the upcoming sessions. Yeah. So there's a question about file handling. Yes, we are going to cover file handling using C. Okay, thanks a lot. I know that some of you still have questions. Please post them on the forum. We'll try to answer them on the forum, as well as we'll have more live sessions in the future. Okay. Yeah. So hope to continue interacting with you. Okay, so in case you still have, I know many of you still have questions, please post them on the forum and we'll try to answer them. Okay, good night.
Yes. We'll stop the broadcast. I'm just